So what we're going to do now, we're going to go through a few points. I'm going to teach you about 100K resumes and how to really help your resume in different unique ways. And we've got a few more TikTok clips to go through alongside this. So I'm going to zoom out a bit. So one thing I want to help you do is to understand, to make the most of your situation right now. And it's unstable for many people. If you're not in the best situation right now, I wouldn't be worried and think it's just you. You want to stand out from the competition, right? And you want to make the most of the opportunity and stack your CV with a lot of skills, a lot of helpful points. And there's different ways of doing this, right? One way is being aware of layoffs that are coming up, right? Suddenly you might have a layoff and you want to treat it as a sign for you to develop skills fast before the door is closing. And what I mean by that is if you can see, oh, you probably only got 1 year left at a company before maybe the layoffs start getting rolled out, or you see the company shrinking, try to develop skills before it's your time to leave. The other thing is around promotions, right? Sometimes you want to make sure when you're promoted to a particular level and things might not work out long term, or how do you get promoted? Think about developing different skills, right? So you can do that to advance at your particular company or shift to another one. Now, another thing is around if you're a junior employee, right? Now, how can you move from a junior employee to more senior levels? One way is to mentoring people, right? Improving your leadership that way. And this will help you, this will prevent you being seen as replaceable, because many junior people are like, how do I make it to the next level? The most simple way is to demonstrate to your management you can actually teach and help other people at your level or slightly below your level. That's how you make it 1 or 2 steps up. The next thing is around senior employees, right? So recognize when promotion paths are blocked, right? And you want to prepare your next move. So sometimes you reach a career ceiling, which means you can't make it to the next level. And it's kind of difficult to do that because you see, oh, the next level, there's only a handful of people there. I'm kind of going to be stuck in middle management. What should I do next? And the best thing to do in that particular instance is to look to job hop. So we're going to cover that too. And there's a lack of social mobility there, right? There's lots of people who are stuck in the middle who can't make it to the next level. So if you're stuck at a particular level, it can come down to building a skill stack with targeted projects so you can escape on your terms. It could be, like, say, managing junior employees or having small projects that you can manage, which will give you some skills to add to your resume to move on. Show you a quick clip from this particular TikToker. There's no sound here. It just says that genuinely curious. Does anyone actually have a job that doesn't drain all their energy, right? That doesn't drain 80% of your personality by Friday? Seriously asking. So what you want to do is pay attention to your energy levels throughout the week, right? To avoid burnout, right? Don't just show up to the job and think things are going to work out. What you want to actually be doing is thinking, how is that getting me to the next level, even if it takes a bit of time? So for example, the way I'd see it here is that you want to consider what's going on each week. That's why it's so important to have a work journal, just a note for yourself in your own notepad, or you have an Excel file or a Word doc, what you're doing each week and how it's bringing you to the next level. What skills did you develop that week? How it's going to help you get promoted or prepare you for the next job, which is what you're going to do in many cases, right? If we move on to this document here, cool. So job security is kind of done, right? And we all know this. That's why we're all on the channel. I'm going to just respond to this comment here. Arvind is saying, I found that for engineering, attaching a portfolio with pictures to your resume is really good. There's something about showing your experience visually to recruiters and managers. There's something good. Definitely also on your LinkedIn, you have the portfolio option where you can save or show some of the work you've done. If you're in an industry like a tech industry where you can show websites you've built and things like that's good. Or if you're in other industries like finance or any kind of more industry where it's based on technical analysis, you could write a few reports to show maybe your trading analysis and things like that. There's definitely something good to show to recruiters and managers, and always have a few examples you can bring up in interviews. I think that's great for you to do. Now, let's go back to this. So job security is done, and it's important to be hyper flexible, right? And I would say this is a good rule for anyone, right? Because what you don't want to do is, firstly, you want to be hyper flexible so you can move between related roles to keep earning a lot of money without stalling your career growth. And this is what happens for a lot of people, is that they get stuck in one role. If the safe option, maybe they have a big mortgage, they just got married, they don't want to upset their financial stability when they're going through personal life change. What you want to do is move between related roles to keep your earnings stable without sabotaging your career growth. Here I've got examples that have worked for people in the finance industry, say moving between audit, which is more of a back office role, to operations, to finance, to sales, right? And the big pay rise is not between audit and operations. a slight pay bump between operations and finance, but the big pay rise is between finance and sales, right? Typically, because you're going from a support function to working in a revenue generating function, which is what sales would be here, right? So this is how you can make slow career moves that make sense. What you don't want to do is do quick wild jumps that are going to sabotage your career. This is when you make random unrelated switches that reset your progress, going from sales to trades to finance, right? I remember having a conversation with someone, just one moment. I remember having a conversation with someone who was working in sales, and they then had a friend who was working in trades, manual labor, and he switched to that because he could make decent money because he was making okay money in sales. And then from that, he wanted to switch to finance. Now, you can imagine how difficult it would be to make that switch, right? If you go from being a car salesman to working as an electrician in construction, and now you want to work in private equity, that's just not going to make sense. And some people just think, well, I've got good skills and I'm a hard worker and it'll work out. But if you make these quick wild jumps, you're really sabotaging not only your career, but your financial ability to survive in this world, right? So you have to be very careful, right, with these big switches. Same way I wouldn't switch my YouTube channel from talking about career and finance to, I don't know, anime and manga. It just would completely tank my algorithm for my channel, right? The same way if you're on your resume, you've got, oh, you've worked in, like I say, you've worked in construction, then you worked in finance, and then now you want to be a salesperson. It's just not going to work out. And I know you might have the contacts that might help, but there will be times where you want to go for job opportunities where you don't have the contacts. Then what are you going to do? How are you going to justify that on your resume? Thanks to JJ, almost 10K. I'm pushing this. I'm going to hide that. We're going to get into this. Now, one of the main costs of job security, as you can see at the top of this screen right now, is that the salaries suck. And if you think about government jobs, that's where you have the most job security. You maybe have more time off compared to people working corporate jobs. You have stable hours. They're not going to ask you to work late in some of these jobs. They'll have more of a stable work environment. I know people who work government jobs, they really don't make good money, but it's just stable. They have the stable life they want. They can spend time with their friends in the evening. They're always finishing work at 5. People who work at government financial regulators. In the UK, we have the FCA. In the US, you have the SEC, the CFTC, and I know people who work there, and they're like, yeah, we just work half the time, and they're making, decent government job because they're a financial regulator. And what they end up doing is just pretending to work. So much of a government job is pretending to work. And I knew someone else who was working in the office at a government job, and then they got to work from home, and they would just, be keyboard. They had a long stick. They would be resting in their bed, and they would tap their keyboard with a stick on the space bar just to keep it active, like they are when they're not. So this is how funny government jobs are. The pay is low, but it'll give you the stability. And the point I'm making here is that if you want to have a successful side hustle, sometimes you do need the time to build that on the side. And how can you get that time while getting paid? Is working a trash government job, working a pointless, low paying job that you just do all the time in the world to do what you want. You can work on while you're on the job, researching things for your side business. In the evening, you can full evening. You're not going to be working a corporate job where you're coming home at 7 p.m., 8 p.m. You've got no energy apart from watching Netflix and going to sleep. That's when you would want to go for a now, we've got 2 headlines here. Job hopping isn't a red flag anymore. It's a life strategy. Many young workers are job hopping. This is a headline here. The second thing is UK professionals are new jobs amidst stagnant salaries. Now, why am I pointing that out? Firstly, Vince, I'm not with that one. I've made a note of that in my streaming tool. Looking to Bro Judea. I haven't had that. So let me go into this though. Job hopping, right? I know it's more and more people are dealing with layoffs. So there's more and more people with lower tenure, which means less time worked at each company, and there's less judgment around it because many people are being laid off for no real good reason. So there's less and less loyalty. It's no longer a sign so much that you're disloyal, you can't keep a job, because so many people are dealing with layoffs. So if you have your resume, of course, aim to work for a company, like I say, 2 to 3 years at least, depending on your industry and the circumstances. But, more and more people are job hopping. They're like, I've had enough, I'm going to the next job. I'm not loyal to the company. I'm looking for the quick pay rise, because if you stay at a company, they're not going to give you pay rises in line with inflation. You're only going to get that big 20 to 30% jump if you do get promoted or if you do job hop. So that's what's going on here, right? Lots of people are job hopping, and people don't care anymore about companies judging them. The same way companies don't care about employees, people don't care about being judged anymore. Now, what are some smart side steps for self-employment, right? This is kind of important. Let me zoom out a bit. So Lots of people want a side hustle and they want to do something completely different. Now, if you have a strong side interest, I think that could be great. Like, let's just say you work in sales. Before I go through this, what you see on your screen, let's say you work in sales, you're successful, but you have a real strong interest and hobby in videography and you want to be a professional videographer. I know someone who did this quite well. There was a channel on YouTube called Divert Living. And what he was doing, he was a US military guy. He was working successfully in the military, spending time in Southeast Asia and places, South Korea, Thailand, places like that. He was working at the military bases. He met a girl there and they did some traveling. And while they were traveling, he was recording a lot of that on his camera, he had a DSLR camera, and he was learning editing skills, drone recording that. And he made a decently successful YouTube channel, and they had ad revenue and doing well from that. But then he ended up breaking up with his girlfriend. I think they had some issues. And then what he did is he moved back to New York State, so not New York City, New York State. And he had all these videography skills. I want to go back to the military and risk my life, and it's just not something I want to do. I want stability. I want to live in the US, live in New York State. And what did he do? He started a videography business, and he started recording people's weddings and other events that they wanted him to cover, family events. And now he runs a successful videography business, photography, things like that. So when you can have a side hustle based on something you're interested in. But in many cases, it makes sense to figure out what is your core skill at your day job and how can you do something similar outside. If you're sales, you want to focus on freelance lead generation, right? You can turn your talent into finding customers for other people in their business to help them get paid to bring in leads for others, right? So you can use your ability to find and convert prospects to help businesses grow without a corporate quota. Because many people have businesses online, but they're not sure how to really get the attention of clients. So you can help them develop their sales skills. That's an obvious side step rather than doing something completely different. The next thing would be your IT support, right? So if you're in IT, you can focus on tech consulting, right? Leverage your troubleshooting skills to be a tech expert who can help with hardware issues and solve tech problems for clients on your own terms. Now, a successful example of this is, and I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy, he's on YouTube too. He's called Caleb Jones. Now, Caleb Jones was working in corporate jobs in the 90s. He's an older guy, around 50 years old now. And what he was doing is working in tech, and he decided he was his own boss. So he started helping with hardware tech support, visiting people's offices, and he would solve issues with their hardware and provide them some guidance on how to manage their internal networks. And then from there, he started, he wanted to work from home. So rather than visiting their offices, he would ask them to send equipment to him in boxes, and in certain ways, he would help them with their hardware there. Then he was doing remote software fixes for some of these companies. And he was earning a high six-figure self-employed in the 90s. Now, this is an interesting case study because he managed to move forward successfully from there. From there, he went from a tech consultant to a management consultant, helping small, medium-sized businesses grow their businesses, whether it's physically and now he does a lot of that, and he works remotely online, earning high six figures, living in all sorts of locations in Dubai, in South America. He rents out some property in the US because he wants to leave the US. He's like some of the people we describe on my channel, some of my views, somewhat critical of the way the West is heading. So there's all sorts of ways of skills you've developed in the work environment to offer it as a freelancer, as a consultant. And then the other thing is becoming an admin guy. Now, typically admin and virtual assistants are something you'd be able to hire maybe from the Philippines or lower cost of living locations. So that's an option for you too, right? To consider if you want to have, if you have good, be a business assistant to someone who's already running a successful business. So those are smart side steps for self-employment. Now we're going to go through another small clip here. I hope this works. Let's listen.
Burnout will have you for your next job. Someone who has gone through 2 rounds of pretty intense burnout working in tech experience this thing where burnout will go, well, you're not capable enough, or you're not able to handle the workload, or you're not good enough at your job as compared to your colleagues. And therefore, when you think about what your next career step needs to be, to keep it small. And that mindset is so incredibly damaging to the potential that you already know you have and your ambition. You're not afraid of hard work. You are not afraid of creating incredible results and impact for yourself, for others, whatever your goal is. But when you have burnout whispering in your ear saying you can't do it, you need to entertain a mindset shift, because you can. Yes, there are situational and environmental factors that have put you into this energetic state. You're going to move through it. This is not forever, it's temporary. And learning how to listen to your body and revive yourself out of that state is such an incredible skill set because stress is going nowhere in our life and it will forever be present. But being able to increase your tolerance for stress is critical. Once you've increased that tolerance for stress and that you know you're unstoppable whilst also taking care of you, to look back at the burnout that sent you here and go, I'm not going to let you keep me small. I'm actually going to back myself to do the things that I want to do. I'm going to educate myself in the way that helps me get to the goals that I want to move toward. Burnout was actually one of the best things that could have happened to me because it was the moment that I recognized this is a reset. This is not the end compared to your colleagues. And
okay, she's talking about, you know, analyzing your situation and not getting caught up in a comparison game with others, right? You want to build a career that matches your lifestyle and where you want to go in your life. And if we go back to my point here, yeah, which is bulletproofing your career. Now, what I'm trying to tell you is that, you know, what my channel is trying to provide is to help you avoid going through the motions and just going through day to day. Oh, I have to make money to survive, to just make it to the weekend so I can get drunk or order some fast food and play video games or watch Netflix or whatever. Is to essentially think about, you know, what is going on, like slow down your process, right? When you're career, you're picking a lifestyle. What is the lifestyle you want and how you can work towards that end goal? And sometimes it can require side steps in your career. So let's think about this in a bit of detail, right? So how can you bulletproof your career to build the stability? Because you're not being given stability by a lot of these companies you're working for. First way is to like pick up in-demand tools and systems to make sure you stay valuable regardless of what's going on in your company, because your company is always going to be dealing with some internal drama and office politics. You should think about what's the general trend in this industry, what will keep me in high demand. For example, throughout my time in the finance industry, there'll be different hot topics. Sometimes it'll be crypto, sometimes financial regulation like MiFID II or Dodd-Frank. You've probably heard of some of those. And I would always be focused on what's the trend or what's the official professional qualification we have to do. There are many diplomas I could have done in finance, which I opted not to do because I realized there's so many people who are my managers who never did this diploma, and I can read up on these topics myself. But in other cases, I might want to learn about what is the trending topic. How can I get on that project? For example, working on MiFID II, which is a popular financial regulation that impacts so much financial activity. I definitely get my name on all those projects. So when I wanted to leave, I could easily present myself to recruiters on what topic right now, so it makes sense to hire me. Now, aligning yourself. You want to position yourself in a profitable, fast-growing area to keep you relevant without needing a big pay rise right away. What do I mean by that? What I'm trying to tell you is that you want to figure out what is the growing area of your company. And I would always do that. It got a bit awkward. I remember working at an American investment bank where I was working with one guy directly, but there was another part of the team that had higher demand and loads of trading activity around that. And I was always trying to learn about that instead of what I was doing, which might not have been the best political decision in terms of office politics, but I was like, okay, well, they're making more money than us. Why shouldn't I learn what's going on? And that's what I did, right? So you'll want to align yourself with growing teams, careers, new initiatives, different projects, and focus on working on those that are marketable. So you know, okay, what's in demand at my company, each team, but what is going on elsewhere in the industry? How do I jump into that? And maybe use the company I'm working at right now that I don't really want to be at, that I don't really like, but maybe go and work in that department or work on those projects. So when I go to a recruiter, I'll say, oh, I've been working on this, and I really can offer that to other companies hiring. So that's how you can basically bulletproof your career. While you might not be getting the pay rise you're looking for, you can build a skill set using the company you're at and use them like they're using you before you can jump and go and get the big prize. Another thing is, like, just to give you some examples of tools in finance, there's a tool that's popular to a certain extent, like an AI tool, which is around financial planning and things like called Plan for Predict, which it helps and make some finance roles efficient. So I would find out what is the latest hot tool in my industry, hot AI tool in the industry. How can I learn that? Other people I remember when I was working in risk management and things like that, they'll pick up tools like Python, even though that's technically tech. They would learn that because it helped make things more efficient, and it was a buzzword with senior management. So just saying they're learning Python would help them in their career. Other things is tech skills. So skills like LangChain, right? It's a new hot tech framework that will help with building AI powered tools and connecting large language modules. So this is a bit of a diagram, LangChain, how it's connecting things like document loaders, prompts, chains, language learning models, LLM, and also agents, AI agents. So you can see, work in tech, might want to look into LangChain, or maybe already working on that. Now, learning the process, right? You want to learn the process and doing things for yourself. Now, what do I mean by this? Let's go to another clip. One moment.
Hi, I'm a burned out contributor at my company. I've made the mistake of taking my job way too seriously when I joined my company and demonstrated all my skills to my employer. I mean, I really hit the ground running as a result, my boss decided to reward me by delegating all their work to me and rebranding it as Reach projects. They claim these projects will get me to the quote unquote next level. I now basically have 2 jobs and haven't seen much of a pay raise or a promotion in years. Even though I've grown incredibly cynical, I have no choice but to excel every day to keep my job. And since I'm so busy, I barely have time to look for a new job. I guess I got a serious case of what they call Stockholm Syndrome. I digress.
So if you're not familiar with Stockholm Syndrome is whereby you kind of, the official definition here, kind of trapped in a circumstances and you kind of adjusted to it or learn to, like, you're in a job, you're trapped in with a difficult manager and you just kind of get used to it, or just think of it as like, oh, well, this is what I have to deal with, or I should just get used to it and like the situation. Now, the trap he's fallen into, or the trap a lot of people fall into, they end up doing all this excessive work, pointless work, and they don't figure out how the game works. When I say the game, I mean office politics, or the game in terms of making the next step in their career. So one way of figuring things out could be office politics. That would, I'll come to your comment in a moment, Vince, but one thing would be learning office politics to help your career and help career growth. But the other thing is learning processes so you can do it for yourself, as in setting up a smaller version of the company for yourself for niche online businesses, right? So if you want to make it from junior employee to senior employee quickly, you want to master how things work so you can climb the corporate ladder in record time. There's a term called Company of One. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that book, and it talks about how you can learn every step of how a system works or a company works so you can build that freedom for yourself. You can build that independence for yourself by having your own business, your own niche business, how you can show without relying on a boss. And the other thing is job hopping, right? How can you job hop faster? If you're stuck at a lower level, if you figure out how the general company works, the general framework, then it'd be easier for you to job hop rather than being stuck there. There's a funny thing I took from WikiHow, which says, reminder, you standing on business, someone talking to someone else. My boss to get me to do extra work after I clocked out yesterday, and he didn't want me to clock back in. I had to stand on business and tell him that I wouldn't work without pay. And it's just basically saying, you know, there's no point being the guy in the TikTok clip where he's just working hard and he's not actually getting anywhere. You've got to think, is this actually getting me to my end goal, or am I just burning myself out so my manager can live a better life? And I know it can be difficult. There's some situations where you might not have the option, but it's about thinking about the bigger goal here. So 1 second. So we move on to the bonus section. Let me explain this in a bit of detail. What can you work from the company? What can you learn from the company you're working at to benefit you? Whether it's to set up a side business, progress in the company, move to another department, or job hop. What you want to learn is these things. You know, what is the general workflow? What is general culture? The processes, the tech and systems used, the daily operations, how the senior management operate and do things, how project management's working, how you could lead projects yourself, and how the general performance review and promotion process works, because that will definitely help you, right? So this is what I've covered kind of in this last bonus section. Let's go through these. So there's about 3 or 4 points. Firstly, you know, take from the company. That's because a lot of times it feels like the company's taking from you. They're draining you of your time and your energy. But what you want to do is take as much from the company, right? You want to understand how the tasks are moving from start to finish, how they're working efficiently, how you can apply that maybe to a side business or moving into a new company, how the process and systems work, what are the top software being used in this company, in the industry, how you can apply it to your next job, how the automation works, what the procedures are, tech stack is being used and how you can develop on that, those tools to work at other companies, and then learn from the top people and the skilled people why they're in the position they're in. Because typically you'd see many people in senior roles and they're not going to be the most skilled, and you're like, well, hold on, how did they make it there? How do I get there? Could be the office politics, could be that you're learning their strategic planning. These are the type of things you could do. And again, if you're looking to job hop, this is what you should do. Extract all the resources from the company before you do job hop. Here I mentioned shadow skilled employees, like learn what the high performers are doing, how they're finding shortcuts to get their work done. Maybe they are delegating a lot of their work. Maybe they are maybe doing questionable things. I remember working at an investment bank where someone who's one level above me was doing work so much quicker than me. And I was thinking, what's gone? Because we were reviewing trading activity to make sure we're getting the best pricing for clients. And I would do this detailed trading analysis. And then he was like, okay, we get these trading. We don't really do that much detailed analysis, just kind of construct a story. We're coming up with very basic, limited information. And he would do the work I was doing that was taking several hours doing detailed analysis. And he would kind of get a justification for a good price for the client within, let's just say 20 to 30 minutes. So you're saving like 2 hours compared to me because I was overly detailed. So find out what little time hacks that people have. The other thing is culture and time management, right? You want to adapt to how top players interact, like I say, how they're saving time and how they're navigating the office politics. Next up, we have moving from a doer to a leader. And as we all know, as I cover on my channel all the time, the people who are doing the most work are not the people who are succeeding. You should figure out how leaders are working, how they're delegating work, right? How you can lead certain small projects that will help you get promoted quicker, right? Figure out what you're not doing right. Pick on, body language, pick up on might be getting and how to quickly fix that so you can quickly progress. Focus on quick improvements you can make to spot inefficiencies, fix them, and make your wins visible. Like when I say make your wins visible, I'm mentioning things in meetings with others on your team so people can see how you're actually adding value and how you're a valuable team member. And then lastly, about building external credibility, right? If you're at a company, you're going nowhere, figure out what are the industry events, what are the conferences you can attend. How can you just basically leverage the brand name of the company so you can network and find your next opportunity or jump on the next trend? And in some cases, training and certifications. Normally I warn against trainings and certifications because you don't want to complete an MBA or a pointless certification and then it just doesn't actually help your career. If it's going to benefit your authority and mobility in the industry, then you should actually study it. But we can discuss that maybe through coaching. This is the book I mentioned, Company of One. I actually listened to this audiobook several years ago, and it's just all about, how you can run a one person, you can operate at a smaller scale and be niche and offer something very unique and really make that work for you. So if you're interested in an audiobook, I'm not affiliated with Paul Jarvis or the author or the book, but it's worth a listen. A lot of people talk about the 4-hour work week. I'm sure you've heard of that. This I see as a bit of an unofficial sequel to it about, how you can actually run a small, how it's successful. He doesn't give you a step-by-step guide, but many successful circumstances. So just to finish up, we've got Vince's comment here, but if he slows down, then that would expose the bosses, wouldn't it? So he's making a joke about the TikTok I just showed, which I'll go back to here. There we go. Where you're saying, if he slows down doing work, that would expose the bosses. And again, like there's so many funny instances of people pretending to work, including myself at sometimes, where I'd be doing so much work so quickly, then we'll have like 3 days or a week without very little work, and we just have to pretend to be busy, and everyone's just scrolling online, reading the news or on Wikipedia, trying to be busy. And like I say, these are on high profile roles where you're on a trading floor and you're dealing with time sensitive issues, but sometimes it will go through quiet periods and you just be wasting time like everyone else. So again, a lot of work is productivity theater. It is acting. It is pretending to be busy when you're not. And that's just the way it is. And that's when you should be focused on your side hustle and figuring out, if you're studying for a professional qualification, how you can squeeze 2 hours of quick study while you're at work, pretending to be busy, or focused on other things that will be relevant to maybe financial investing and things like that. So if we just finish up here,